So what's new? Pretty much everything. There's so much news going on. It seems like every October we get this glut of all this creative news kind of coming at us once. And I'm going to start with the Microsoft Surface Book 2 that was just announced earlier this week. It's pretty cool. It's obviously an update to the old Surface Book, which came out about 2 years ago. This is their high-end laptop. It's basically a tablet that detaches from the keyboard end of the laptop piece. And of course it comes with a pen and you can draw on it, and it's very similar to the Surface Pro, but it's like a different form factor. So the real question here is, will I be reviewing one? Well, the answer here is probably not, no. Why not? Well, mainly is because I've already reviewed the Surface Pro earlier this year. I think from a technology standpoint, when you're talking about like the N-Trig pen that it uses, it's going to be very similar, if not identical, to the technology that was used in the Surface Pro earlier this year. So I feel like I've already reviewed that, or I've already gotten a feel for it. Plus, personally, I like the Surface Pro form factor a little better. You got the kickstand, so it's easier to set on an angle that you want. The laptop thing is a little harder to use. One thing I do like about the new Surface Book that looks really cool is the fact that they now have a 15-inch version. Another thing that it comes with that you're not going to get in the Surface Pro is the fact that there is a graphics processor in the base of a lot of these things, in the actual like keyboardy laptop part that you're used to in these computers. So if you're into gaming, that's something this is probably going to do way better. Or if you're into 3D, it's going to do this way better than the old Surface Pro is. One thing that I do want to take a look at is that there is another Surface clone on the block. It is the HP ZBook 2. HP is going after the creative market, and it looks like they're going after it pretty hard with their new ZBook 2. It is a Surface clone, but listen to this. It is using Wacom ERN pen tech. Nice. And look, shortcut buttons along the side. It's like they watch this channel and they know exactly what I want in a Surface Pro. The one thing I'm not really sure about is the design itself. I just don't really like the edges. I think it's, I don't know how to say it nicely. I think it's kind of ugly. From what I understand, they're kind of test running this thing over at the Adobe Max conference that is happening this week, which is obviously like a designer conference. So this thing is aimed at designers. It totally looks like it's aimed at designers. And I think designers are looking for something a little sleeker, a little more upscale, a little better design. And I think what really surprises me about this is that if you look at HP's other laptops, like the new Spectre laptop, those things are beautiful. The HP logo looks so good on them. They've got these little touches of gold. I guess it was a different design team working on this. I don't know. Maybe it's just one of those things that once you see it in person, it looks really good. It's just the pictures aren't doing it justice. Who knows? We'll take a look. But having those express keys or shortcut keys, whatever you want to call them, on the face of the device and the Wacom stuff inside, oh, that could be really good. Now, the ZBook comes out in December. I'm probably not going to be able to get my hands on one until January, but when I can, I'm definitely going to do a review of that one. And this is a little bit older news, but just last week, Google announced the Pixelbook. I guess we're calling everything book now, huh? Several folks over on Twitter down here below in the comments have asked me about that. Hey, are you going to review it? And honestly, I'm not really sure. It doesn't look that interesting to me, mostly because it's a Chromebook. I have nothing against Chromebooks. Chromebooks can obviously run Android apps, but I think when you're looking at this price range, I would rather just go for something like the Surface Pro or an iPad or maybe this new HP ZBook that, you know, all of those at that price range just look like better values than going Android. Not that I have anything against Android. I like Android. It's just that when you're talking about price range, you know, if you could get something for $300, hey, that could be a good budget tablet. But when we're talking about going over $1,000 to get something, I don't know. I mentioned that Adobe Max is going on right now. This is Adobe's big annual conference where they announce all their new features and cool stuff that they're adding to their software and all the stuff that they've got going on in the creative world. It's happening right now as this week goes on. I haven't had the chance to like kind of review everything because it's kind of ongoing as we speak, but there have been some pretty cool announcements that have come out of it already. The first one that I want to touch on is I have talked about Kyle's brushes before, and Kyle of Kyle's Brushes fame has joined Adobe. I'm not sure if this is good news or bad news. I think overall for me it's probably good news. It means that all of his brushes are now going to be included as part of the Adobe Creative Cloud suite. If you're using older Adobe products, the brushes you have are still going to work fine, but you're probably not going to be able to buy those brushes going forward unless you have a Creative Cloud license. I can't say enough good things about those brushes. Whenever I'm asked, why are you drawing in Photoshop? That seems a little backwards. It's usually because of those brushes. I know it's not the greatest painting program in the world, but when you have tools that are so good, I just love them. Speaking of brushes, Adobe is doing some cool stuff in Photoshop around their brushes. They're adding some features to it. One, when you import a lot of brushes, they're really hard to organize and kind of find the brush that you're looking for. If you've got 40 inkers, how do you know which inker you're looking for? They're totally overhauling that brush interface to make that better and easier to search through. Woohoo! They're also introducing brush smoothing directly into Photoshop. This is something that other programs have done for ages, like Clip Studio has some great brush smoothing. It's nice to see this stuff come to Photoshop, however. Microsoft is also announcing some things over at Adobe Max. The main thing they're talking about is that there is more dial support. You know, the Surface dial that came with the giant Surface Studio last year. There is better support in Adobe programs for that now. I'm not surprised at all that they're doing this. I am hoping that they come out these updates really, really soon. I have to send the Dell Canvas back, but the Dell Canvas has the totem, very similar to the Surface Studio dial. So I'm hoping that I get the opportunity to test out some of these new features in the Adobe CC stuff before I have to send that back. So Adobe, hurry it up. Microsoft also announced that if you're buying a new Surface product starting this fall, you will get 3 months of free Adobe CC membership. You know, I think it's a good way to kind of bring people in, give people a taste of the software and that sort of thing. So I think it's good for Microsoft to kind of be embracing the creative community the way they have the last couple years. You know, I'm all for it. And lastly, this may not interest everybody here, but it interests me, so I'm going to talk about it. On the first day of Adobe Max, Adobe was going to kind of take their Adobe XD user interface design product. They're taking it out of beta. They're releasing version 1.0, and they're releasing a whole bunch of new features, kind of getting it fully formed. It's ready to be used by the public. So this was exciting news. But that very morning before the announcement, Envision decided to announce their new UI software, which is called Envision Studio. I guess we're calling everything Studio now. I've been a web designer, interface designer for a while. I've been using mostly something called Sketch, which is only Mac, which is one of the big kind of knocks I personally have against it. Adobe XD is a complete copy of Sketch. It looks like Envision Studio is very much a copy of Sketch as well. You know, not necessarily a bad thing, but it's kind of cool to see Envision jumping in there, because Envision creates this like prototyping software where you can take screens of the apps that you're working on, kind of link them up and make like a clickable prototype application that you can show to people and test out with users and that sort of thing. So Envision having control of their own software means that they can do a lot tighter integrations. They've done some cool stuff with Sketch, but they can, if they own the software, they can do so much more. So I think there's a lot of excitement for what Envision is doing, and stealing Adobe's thunder today was kind of funny. And scrolling through my Twitter feed, where there's a lot of interaction designers in there, it was clear that Envision had way more buzz leaving the day than Adobe did. Part of the reason I'm bringing this up is in the comments of these videos, often I see people say, oh, it's such a shame that Adobe has a monopoly over all this stuff. There's nothing creative happening because of their monopoly. And I just want to say that I disagree. I think in some ways they still have a monopoly. They have most of the market share, but there's so much creative stuff happening in the software space right now. And that's kind of why I bring this up. In the interface area, they definitely do not have a monopoly. In some other areas like After Effects, there is nothing else like After Effects out there. In the video area, I think they're making ground on like Final Cut Pro or whatever the Apple version of their video software is. But in some places, like painting apps, there's like 80 painting apps out there, and they're making progress by leaps and bounds. And now Adobe's trying to catch up by doing the brush smoothing and things like that. So I think it's pretty cool that there is a lot of innovation, especially when you look at the iPad and the iOS world. Like Procreate is destroying Adobe in terms of just the quality of the product that they're putting out there. So there is hope. Don't get too down when you see that like $50 a month price tag. You don't need this software to do great things. There are a lot of other options out there, whether you need Affinity for vectors or you're looking at some of these other painting programs out there. There are some great choices out there. So I think that does it. I think that's our news update for the week. That's all I've got. If you guys have any comments or questions, or if there's anything that I haven't caught up from the Adobe Max yet, let me know about it down in the comments. I'm definitely going to be checking out some of their videos. There are a lot of videos coming out of Adobe Max in the next couple days. So yeah, that's all I've got for today. I guess I'll see you guys later.